Hi, my name is Tony Van Veen, CEO of Discmakers. Spring has sprung, the birds are chirping, I've moved outside, but I'm afraid I have some bad news. Prices have started rising around every one of us, and we as a company and every one of our competitors are seeing our costs increase as well. So with today's video, I want to give you a heads up that prices for physical media for artists are likely going to be rising in the not too distant future. I'll explain why in the video, and I'll give you some ways that you can minimize any extra cost to you. Frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable discussing this topic on video. I mean, when prices go up, we don't usually discuss it or advertise it, but I feel it's appropriate to give you some context and to give you a heads up. As I'm sure you've seen on the news, or maybe you've experienced yourself, with the economy rebounding at the tail end of the pandemic that we're in, we are starting to see costs rising in many sectors of the economy. We've seen it with lumber due to construction and DIY projects. We've seen it with cardboard, shipping cartons for e-commerce and in other areas. And there are two main forces at work. The first one is supply chain disruptions. As you know, global trade was disrupted in a big way by the pandemic. For a number of reasons, there aren't enough shipping containers in the right places. There aren't enough ships to move those shipping containers that are there. And due to COVID, there haven't been enough dock workers to unload the ships that do make it to port in the United States. On top of it, due to demand increasing and a shortage of drivers, right now, there's not enough trucks in the US to ship cargo from point A to point B. So some wholesale freight costs have gone up by more than double. In fact, there's some that have quadrupled. If you buy online from like Amazon and you get free prime shipping, you don't really feel it. But if you're a manufacturer, then you are paying much higher freight rates for every incoming container of jewel cases, of paper, of cardboard, of polycarbonate, and any other raw materials. Then the weather wreaked havoc on the supply chain. Our CDs are molded out of pelletized polycarbonate plastic. It happens that many of the plastics manufactured in the US are made in Texas. And Texas has had a rough weather year with 6 hurricanes hitting land near Houston last summer, and then the disastrous deep freeze this winter that knocked many chemical and plastic producers out for weeks, if not months. We experienced this very acutely. Our polycarbonate supplier declared force majeure this spring and was unable to deliver us product for several months. We had to resort to importing much more expensive material from Asia, from Europe, paying extra for shipping, and due to the logjam at US ports, we actually ended up flying in 1 container of polycarbonate from the EU just so that our plant would be able to keep running. I mean, talk about expensive. So, long story long, we're seeing upward cost pressure on anything from shipping cartons to paper to inks to the UV coating material that makes our CD covers so shiny. The second force at work is just plain and simple increased demand. The economy is starting to rebound, and while there is still high unemployment, many people are flush with cash from their Trump checks from last year and their Biden checks from this year. Businesses are having difficulties filling all their job positions, and this is doing 2 things. It is delaying many orders, and it's driving wages up, which is a great thing for workers, but it also drives costs up. So what does all this mean? Well, we're seeing states reopening their economies and loosening COVID restrictions. Concerts are getting scheduled for late summer and fall, which is awesome. And we are already starting to see an increase in demand for vinyl record pressing, for CD duplication, for CD replication, as some artists, many artists in fact, are starting to get ready to start performing. And now, I know artists aren't made of money, and we've tried to keep our manufacturing price increases to a minimum. However, depending on the demand this fall, with the continued rise in raw material, labor, and shipping costs, it is quite likely you'll be seeing some price increases for just about anything you will need as an artist, whether it's merch or vinyl or CDs, regardless of who does your manufacturing for you. So how can you minimize these cost increases? Well, 2 ways. First, order early. Price inflation is coming. In my opinion, it's inevitable. The longer you wait to get your order in, the more likely you'll face a price hike. A larger price hike the longer you wait. So order earlier. The second, allow yourself enough time. The faster you need your product, the shorter your turn time, the more rush charges will apply. If you leave yourself 3 weeks or more for manufacturing, you'll end up paying the lowest prices and you'll get to pay the least possible for shipping. You can get ground shipping, which is a lot cheaper than 2-day or next day rush shipping because you didn't leave yourself enough time. Now you may wonder, can I pay now and order later in the year? And unfortunately the answer is no. If we need to do your manufacturing later in the year, we will have to do so with a higher cost material, which will mean that we have to charge the price that's in effect at the time that you are ready to order. So how high might prices go up? Unfortunately, it's impossible to say. The price per disc may only go up by another nickel or a dime, I think. It depends on what happens really with raw materials costs. And trust me, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to help you minimize any increases by encouraging you to order your disc for the fall as early as possible. Is there any good news? Well, for what it's worth, if prices go up by a nickel and you order 300 CDs, it only adds up to about $15 for your order. Not the end of the world. But if you can avoid that by ordering a bit sooner, why not? Remember, for today's independent artists, CDs are still the best way to monetize your music by selling them at your concerts. And they represent the best value for your dollar. If you sell a disc for $10 at your concert, and it costs you $1.60 instead of $1.50 to manufacture, it's not that significant, right? Instead of making $8.50 in profit, which is an 85% margin, you make $8.40, which is still a really juicy 84% profit margin. So plan your project well, and let's get this show on the road. We'll be here when you're ready. See you next time.